Okay, let's talk about something that I think causes a ton of anxiety for a lot of believers. It's this nagging question that just sits in the back of your mind. You've been saved, you've accepted grace, but then you mess up, you sin. And right away, this wave of doubt just crashes over you. You start thinking, did I lose my salvation? Am I still forgiven? What happens now? It's a really personal and honestly a super confusing spot to be in.
So let's just jump right in. Do saved people sin? Yeah, of course they do. We all know that's painfully real. So, what then? How do we hold these two things in our head at the same time? That salvation is real, but so is our sin. That's the big problem we're going to unpack together today. To really get to the bottom of this, we first have to get our heads around just how big salvation is. And, one of the best ways I've ever heard it explained is through this simple but really powerful story that we're going to call the all-inclusive ticket. So I want you to picture this young man. He has scraped together every single penny he could find just to buy a ticket for this long boat ride across the ocean. He's full of hope, right? He's heading to a new life, but he has literally nothing else to his name. This ticket is everything. So every time the dinner bell rings, he just hides out in his cabin. He's got a few crackers, maybe a little bit of cheese, and he's rationing it to make it last. He can actually hear the other passengers laughing and talking about how great the food is, and meanwhile his stomach is just in knots. He is suffering. All because he's operating under one single crushing assumption. I can't afford that. And then, on the very last day of the trip, a crew member finds him looking weak and asks why he never comes to eat. The young man, kind of shamefully admits he just doesn't have the money. And that's when he hears these words that completely change his world. Can you just imagine that moment? The shock, the relief, but also that deep, deep regret. He could have been eating like a king the whole time. And this is such a perfect picture of our salvation. See, a lot of us live like that young man. We worry about every single sin we commit after we're saved, thinking we have to somehow pay for it over and over again. But the truth is, the ticket was all-inclusive. When Jesus paid the price, it covered the entire journey. Every sin from your past, every sin you're struggling with right now, and every sin you will ever commit in the future, paid in full. What's really amazing here is that the Bible is so realistic about this. It doesn't pretend we're suddenly going to be perfect. It knows we're still going to sin. But instead of leaving us to worry, it gives us this incredible promise. When we mess up, we have an advocate. Think of it like a defense attorney, Jesus, who stands before the Father and says, hey, that's covered. Their ticket is paid in full. It's not about re-earning forgiveness. It's about remembering that it's already been paid for. Now, this naturally leads to a really logical and very important question. If the ticket covers everything, well, what's to stop us from just going wild? Let's tackle that head on. And that's a fair question, isn't it? If a believer's sin doesn't have eternal consequences anymore, what's stopping them from just living a careless life? Well, the answer the Bible gives has way less to do with rules and a lot more to do with a radical change of heart. And to get this, we need one more analogy. I mean, really think about this. If you were drowning out in the ocean, going under, totally helpless, and someone dove in and risked their own life to drag you back to shore, what's your first response going to be? It's going to be this overwhelming, life-changing gratitude, right? You'd never say, wow, thanks for that, and I'm going to go jump right back in. When you truly understand the grace that saved you, it doesn't make you want to go back to the sin that was killing you. It makes you unbelievably grateful to the one who pulled you out. And hey, this isn't just some nice theory. Let's look at the incredible true story of the famous Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky. When he was a young man, he was sentenced to die by firing squad. So there he is, standing in the freezing cold, and he's told he has 5 minutes to live. In those last moments, his whole world just shifts. He prays for his friends, he feels this crushing regret for a wasted life, and then this incredible appreciation for just being alive. And just as the soldiers are about to fire, a messenger on a horse comes galloping in with the last-second pardon from the emperor. So after being literally pulled back from the brink of death, did Dostoevsky think, sweet, I got away with it, time to party? Not a chance. That second chance at life gave him this deep, unbreakable sense of purpose. He saw life as this incredible gift, and he spent the rest of his years trying to live it meaningfully. You see, real grace doesn't inspire indulgence, it inspires purpose. So if sin doesn't lead to a believer losing their salvation, does that mean it just has no consequences at all? Well, not exactly. And this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most important distinction in this entire explainer: the massive difference between discipline and condemnation.
The Apostle Paul just spells it out for us right here in 1 Corinthians. He draws this razor-sharp line in the sand between two totally different kinds of judgment. For the believer, there's discipline. For the rest of the world, there's condemnation. And these two things are not the same. They're not even in the same ballpark.
So look, here's the bottom line. Just look at this breakdown. Discipline is what a loving father gives his child. The whole point is to correct, to restore, to teach. Condemnation, on the other hand, is what a judge hands down to a criminal. Its only purpose is to punish, and the result is final separation. For a believer, God always acts as a father, never as a judge. His goal is always to bring us back, not to push us away.
All right, so we get the idea of discipline, but what does this fatherly correction actually look like in real life? The Bible gives some pretty direct and honestly some pretty tough examples of this. So according to the sources, drawing from the book of Corinthians, discipline can actually show up as things like physical weakness, sickness, or other hardships, maybe financial trouble or accidents. And in the most serious cases, it could even mean physical death. Now, I know that sounds incredibly harsh, and it is. But we have to keep remembering the why behind it, which is a world away from simple punishment.
Let's look at probably the most extreme example of this in the entire Bible. It's from 1 Corinthians chapter 5. There was a guy in the church who was living in a really serious, unrepentant sin, something that was shocking even to the non-believers in that city. And the Apostle Paul's response to it was just as shocking.
The instruction was intense. Basically, remove God's protective covering from this man's life and allow for the destruction of the flesh. This could mean serious physical consequences, maybe even leading to his death. But, and this is the whole point, look closely at the reason why. It wasn't for eternal punishment. The goal was the complete opposite, so that his spirit may be saved.
And that just perfectly shows the difference, doesn't it? Even in the most severe, intense case of discipline we see in Scripture, the end goal was to save him. It was a father taking drastic, painful action to make sure his child's spirit would be safe in the end. It wasn't a judge handing down a final sentence. It was a rescue mission, not a rejection.
So, when we really start to get this, when this difference between discipline and condemnation sinks in, how does it change the way we live? Well, it doesn't mean there are no consequences, but it absolutely removes that soul-crushing kind of fear. It builds a totally new foundation for our lives. So if you want to boil it all down to one sentence, here it is: we are completely free from the terror of being eternally separated from God. That's a done deal. It's settled. But we live with a healthy, sober understanding that our choices matter here and now, and that our loving Father will step in to correct us when we go off track.
And in the end, this way of thinking is so much more powerful than a religion based on fear. When you live in fear, you're always looking over your shoulder, terrified of making a mistake. But when you live out of gratitude, like the guy saved from drowning or Dostoevsky saved from the firing squad, you want to live a life that honors the incredible gift you've been given. It's a life motivated by love and freedom, not a life crippled by fear.
So I guess we'll just end with this question for you to think about. If you truly believe that your eternal home is secure, that it can't be taken away from you, how does that change everything? How does that freedom change the way you look at your failures, your successes, your entire life? How does it free you up to get back up when you fall down? Not because you're scared of being punished, but because you are totally secure in a Father's love?